Welcome back to Godfall 101. Like and subscribe, and let's go. Gamespot sat down with game director Keith Lee and gave us a few more nuggets of information to chew on. I'll put the link to the full article in the description below. First up, let's talk about Archon Abilities. When discussing combat, Keith Lee told GameSpot, quote, "Mastering Godfall's broad combat system is going to be a big part of the experience, but that searching for more and better loot will be part of that experience. It comes back to Valorplates, the armor at the core of Godfall's gameplay. There are 12 Valorplates for you to unlock as you play Godfall, each with its own specific set of stats, a passive buff for your character, and an Archon ability." End quote. Now, the article mentions filling up a bar before being able to activate this ability, but this is the ability we talked about in the last video. Silvermane with his 3 swords and Greyhawk doing whatever he was going to do before the footage was cut. Each Valorplate will have specific stats and a passive buff. Reading this on paper does not sound exciting at all, does it? Cool, different numbers. I'm sure it'll be different in-game, but I always assumed that each Valorplate would have specific abilities. Alright, so lore-wise, this suggests that we'll be getting our power from the Archons, or they are somehow associated with the 12. I speculated that the Valorplates were actually the mortal shells of the Archons, and we found them, so maybe that was closer than I thought at first. Alright, now moving on to character level, we learned that our characters will have an overall level and not individual Valorplate levels. These levels will let us unlock abilities on a skill grid. It sounds like weapons have level requirements also, so instead of Valorplates having specific abilities, it sounds like our specific path that we choose will unlock those abilities for all the Valorplates that we use, maybe? Now this is Keith Lee talking about the loot. Quote, "From our perspective, we're less about generating an infinite number of combinations, but more thinking about our loot a little bit more like Monster Hunter World or maybe like God of War, where the loot is a little bit more specific. But then, each loot piece is a very meaningful or impactful if you slot it into your Valorplate or if you get a very specific weapon. So that's been one of the big differences, is focusing on the quote-unquote quality of the loot rather than just pure infinite quantity." As someone that does not like the grind, quote-unquote the grind, to get the perfect weapon, this sounds great to me. So that focus on a meaningful loot system pairs with Godfall's focus on melee combat, which Lee compared to 2019's God of War or Devil May Cry 5, as opposed to something like a Soulsborne game. You'll be looking to control the battlefield, prioritize some enemies over others, and create combos. Okay, so I was expecting a Souls-like experience when they first talked about skill-based combat, so it's time for me to readjust my preconceived notions about how combat's going to feel, and just accept that it's not going to be a Souls-like game. It's going to be different. Keith Lee says, quote, "The way that we've designed our combat pillars from the ground up, when we first started designing in combat, is that offense is greater than defense. So we really think about making sure that the player can get that feeling of offensive power fantasy. So most Soulsborne games are much more defensive, meaning that you want to isolate. You want to do only a one-on-one. It's disadvantageous for you to fight 2-on-1. You want to always be very systematic with how you play in general. While for us, we want you to feel that you can dominate and completely eviscerate your enemy if you know how to play. Plus, have the right gear and loadouts. So for us, we have a much broader spectrum of enemies, more variety, and as a result of that, we also embrace many to one." End quote. So talking about combat and weapons, the article mentions, if you find weapons you like in particular, though you can use crafting materials to increase their power by upgrading them in the Seventh Sanctum, your character's home base. So this is a very brief mention at a crafting system. We don't know much about the system, but I have always said that the crafting systems in games really need to be useful in the end game for them to matter. I hope to hear more about it soon, but until then, I'm just not going to expect anything out of a crafting system. Mentioning the Seventh Sanctum makes me wonder what happened to 1 through 6, and if there are 12 total Sanctums, 1 for each Archon. Can we decorate the Seventh Sanctum? Is this something that we're going to be able to customize at all? Whether we can customize it or not, the Seventh Sanctum is going to be our home base, and in Godfall, it's divided into missions that you'll choose from in the Seventh Sanctum along with our loadout. There's going to be story missions, which will have mid and end bosses you'll face as you advance through the Godfall's tale. There will be a hunt. These hunt missions will send you out to track down, learn about, and face bosses in particular. And all of this is part of our overarching missions to climb the Skybreaker monolith at the center of Godfall and kill the Mad God macros at the top. So I really hope that there's a good story. Reading all the lore bits from Duelist, I know that the team is capable of some really interesting storytelling, and I really hope we get something that lives up to the inspirations that they said in the beginning from that first PlayStation Magazine lifestyle interview. Alright, so let's talk about the 90 plus enemies quote. This is going to be something that's going to get passed around and talked about a lot, I'm sure. The quote is, Godfall includes more than 90 kinds of enemies, Lee said, so you'll have a lot of potential combinations coming at you, and learning to skillfully deal with them is a big focus of Godfall's gameplay. Alright, so here's my take on it. I don't believe that there will be 90 plus unique enemy models in the game. I think this is a bad quote and the kind of thing that should not be added into an article like this. Will there be 90 different enemies with different stats, affinities, and affixes? Probably yes. And the character models may have some variation or slight differences. Are they going to be completely brand new character models? I don't think so. When was the last time that you played a third-person action RPG, whatever they're calling this, that had 90 plus different enemies in it? I just don't think that's going to happen. I would be gladly surprised if it did, if there was that amount of variety. But I just don't think there's going to be. Hey, if I'm wrong, I'm happy to be wrong in this case. And I'll freely admit that I was wrong. So let's get to the part about the PlayStation 5 SSD and the DualSense controller. I'm interested to see what the SSD brings to the table that the PC version will not have. I don't care at all about vibrating controllers. I'm happy for people that do. I just don't care. I'm not interested in it. Whatever. There's no amount of selling me on what the vibrations are going to do to my hands to make me feel like I'm sliding over rock or sliding over water for me to care. That's just me personally. I don't care about it. So thank you so much for stopping by to learn more about Godfall. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment about whether you like the direction of the combat or were you expecting more Souls-like gameplay. Let me know in the comments. And as always, please be good to each other and stay safe.